In the attic, all of Jack's presents have been stored while the melody of What's This bounces around. Ghostly, glowing presents lie around the room, abandoned with wrapping paper covered in barbed wire, bones, and snakes. Three of the jack-o'-lanterns in the boxes pop up and either scream or laugh, depending on where they are on the ride. But with the pull string duck and a snarling toy train with tentacle tracks, a long black and orange snake having eaten some of the presents, with Jack's naughty and nice list hanging in its mouth. I really, really like the snake that's up there. I think
Mm-hmm.
it's a
It's
really,
gorgeous.
it's a really cool. Is it an animatronic? Yeah, I guess it is.
Kind of, yeah. But the colors are stunning on that in comparison to the rest of like the grade attic. That the colors on that are
Oh yeah,
beautiful.
it really feels like you're in that film, which is really, really
Mm-hmm.
cool.
Yeah, it really
Um,
does.
no, but yeah, hidden in the corner is the Heartbeat Bride that Jared was talking about earlier. They actually brought that from the Haunted Mansion in Florida and now are storing her in California, which is really cool. I've only seen her for the overlay, and this is actually
Mm-hmm.
the first time this year that I've ever seen her. So
Mm-hmm.
I really hope they keep her around because when I saw that, I freaked out and I was like, oh my God, this is
Mm-hmm.
really, really cool.
Mm-hmm.
The original version of Constance Hatchaway. And a climactic finale in the graveyard has completely covered in snow, and the spiral hill from Halloween Town sits in the middle of the graveyard. Jack Skellington, dressed as Santa Claus, greets guests as the gates, wishing them a Merry Christmas with his dog Zero. Tombstones and crypts everywhere are decorated with small bows and ribbons, and guests pass a quintet of bus topped with the singing jack-o'-lanterns. As well, you can see Sally sitting next to a grave stone looking at Jack, and it's super, super, super cute. Um,
Mm-hmm.
Although she doesn't really have anything to do with the actual story, I was really glad that they put her in there because it
Mm-hmm.
was really special. Oogie Boogie as Oogie Claus has taken over the crypt as Oogie's holiday tricks and treats as he hands out tricks and treats to all the guests in a wicked game of Halloween Christmas Roulette. Guests pass by three mirrors where they can see what present they're getting this year. If you get a question mark in a coffin, lock, shock, and barrel jump out of each mirror, laughing mischievously as you. After disembarking your doom buggy, Sally waves goodbye as the shadow of Jack's sleigh passes over the moon. I don't know. I absolutely love Haunted Mansion Holiday.
It's the
And
best.
I'm super, super glad that they're still doing it this year, especially with COVID and everything.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so yeah, that finishes up with that. On to Phantom Manor.
Oh, is it time already? Okay.
Yeah.
Well, that went by fast. All right, so we're gonna switch gears a little bit, and we're moving over to Disneyland in Paris. Now, I'm not particularly fond of that park per se, um, but this is something that is quite extraordinary to me, which is Phantom Manor, the haunted mansion that exists in Disneyland Paris. Um, so the opening date was April 12th of 1992. The overall like backstory of this particular mansion. Actually, you know what? I'll do the history first, and then we'll get into the backstory because I think we kind of have to put the backstory in.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a very interesting backstory. But the history of itself of the Phantom Manor, the original haunted mansion concept actually began in Disneyland in the 1950s with a large mansion that's run down and kind of falling apart at the hinges to give this like ominous and mystical feel to it. Of course, that idea was scrapped by Imagineers in the final product for California's mansion because they went, as you can tell now, there's something completely different there to kind of fit the New Orleans square idea. But that idea of the rundown like shack kind of thing came back by the Imagineering team behind Euro Disneyland as a way to bring these kind of like old ideas into a new generation. But the biggest issue of Disneyland in France was that there are multiple languages spoken in the country that kind of need to be understood in order for an attraction to work. So they need, when making attractions there, you kind of have to take a non-verbal communication tactic in order to tell a story. So they figured, with the rundown mansion look, with the kind of old abandoned Victorian mansion, they were able to convey that this was a place that had seen a lot and it was a place to be feared without like explicitly saying it. And that was really, really important to the Imagineering team at the time. The rest of Frontierland, when that idea came in for the mansion, the rest of Frontierland was actually themed around this like haunted mansion, which is the original concept of the rundown shack. So once the mansion was dropped in, they were like, okay, what land works with this? Frontierland. Let's drop it into Frontierland. And you wouldn't necessarily expect a haunted mansion to be in Frontierland, but they actually reworked the story in a way that works quite well. So they kind of see the Victorian house and that kind of like mid to late 19th century kind of vibe is what the rest of Frontierland is themed to. It's the town of Thunder Mesa, which is this a gold rush town. And so the entire backstory of the mansion ended up becoming the overall theme, which is the depiction of the rise and the fall of the American Southwest in the 19th century. So after a story was fully developed, Imagineers decided that Haunted Mansion wasn't a good enough name for this particular attraction, considering it was so different than the original in the United States. Like it was in Frontierland, it had a whole different look. They had a whole different story, which I'll get to later. So they ended up changing the name to Phantom Manor. It kind of translates in French a little bit better. So they figured that one kind of rolls off the tongue better for them. So Phantom Manor.
It kind of does, to be honest. Like thinking
Mhm.
about it, like it's easier to say Phantom Manor than Haunted Mansion.
Haunted Mansion, yeah. It's quite just like the ride itself. It is a seamless name. So a debate began when they got into production on whether or not to keep the ongoing narration throughout the ride, similar to the Ghost Host that we're all familiar with. But again, with so many languages coming together, they had to do something different. So they decided to assemble a cast of characters that would be seen throughout the ride, which included the widowed bride figure that only made a brief appearance in the United States, and a ghostly presence known as the Phantom. Horror film actor Vincent Price was asked to record a ghost host narration in French, but because he's an American actor, he struggled greatly with the material he was given until he was asked to do it in English, and then he did it in 2 takes perfectly. He also recorded a dozen takes of his very famous evil laugh, so they were able to incorporate that into their ride. Meanwhile, John Debney, who had done a few orchestrations of famous Disney songs, he did an overlay for Small World to kind of give it a more triumphant, fleshed out feeling for that ride. They asked him to join the team to do a dramatic orchestration of the famous Grim Grinning Ghost song. So that is the overlay that exists in Phantom Manor. It is John Debney's rendition of Grim Grinning Ghosts. Once construction had finally finished, the show scenes were nearly complete. They showed the ride to a number of French park officials, and this is just a cute little thing. Head Imagineer Jeff Burks actually held a boombox over his shoulder with the orchestrations playing as he walked officials through the nearly finished attraction.
I love that.
A cute little fun fact about that. So just to make it clear, Imagineers were very, very passionate about this particular project. The only issue, yeah, for real. And once you hear the backstory, you'll understand why for sure. But the only issue remaining was that French cast members were kind of, done with translating the ghost host speech to non-English speaking guests, because it ran for a while with the English narration and then like a little bit of French thrown in every now and then. But, cast members were getting exhausted translating it all the time. But so luckily, it's so funny. One of Vincent Price's most famous film had a French dub, and the voice actor was actually available to record for them. So he actually dubbed the narration for Vincent Price's voice in French. So it's literally like it's the same thing. Like
that's so cool.
French speak awesome. Like people who only speak French, that's Vincent Price's voice to them. So it's good that they were able to keep that vibe. But they were able to kind of do a little bit of narration, but in a less story focused kind of way. So even English speaking guests and tourists were able to still understand what was going on. When the nail in the coffin, if you will, was when Michael Eisner's son went on the ride. Michael Eisner took his son on the ride, and when it finished, he walked out and said, "This is the best haunted mansion in the world." And Michael Eisner was like, "Yep, that's all I need. Stamp of approval. Let's open it." So that is how Phantom Manor opened up. Now let's get into the backstory a little bit.
Excited.
So us Disneyland and Disney World people can't possibly imagine Haunted Mansion sitting next to Thunder Mountain, right? But it does in Paris. So it's set in the American Southwest in 1860. The owner of the Thunder Mesa gold mines is Henry Ravenswood. The original idea was going to be Arthur Ravenswood, which is the original Haunted Mansion, OG Haunted Mansion character, but they changed it to Henry to be like his brother. Henry Ravenswood, he was actually killed during an earthquake. And so meanwhile, his daughter Melanie Ravenswood, wanted to marry a man that Henry never approved of. So once her father had passed away, she went ahead with the wedding. But on the wedding day, the groom never arrived due to being hung by the neck and killed by an entity called the Phantom. Now, there's another kind of like fan theory that within Thunder Mountain, the reason why the train goes crazy is because the Phantom entity, the demonic entity, exists in the mountain. So when the earthquake killed Henry, the Phantom entity took over his body.
Mm-hmm.
I
thought it was the spirits of Thunder Mesa.
Yeah, it was like the earthquake kind of like unleashed something.
It's like that a supernatural thing from the Indians that were like living there before it was a gold mine. Yeah. So when that whole like disaster happened, that spirit was unleashed, killing him and becoming the Phantom. Yeah.
And his wife. Yeah.
So there was like a phantom entity, but now Henry Ravenswood is technically the Phantom.
Up until 2019, that was the theory. The theory was that Henry was Henry was the Phantom, but it was never explicitly stated. It was kind of like that it would make sense that the Phantom would kill the man he didn't want her to marry, right? That makes sense. But it was never like,
it's just a fan theory.
The ride didn't really state that because they never showed any kind of imagery of Henry becoming that Phantom. So it was kind of a rumor. But the rest of the ride is basically Melanie wondered what happened to her fiance. She didn't know what happened, so she sat in the manor for 100 years waiting for him. And some say that she still haunts the house to this day.
That's a long time.
So yeah, it's a long time. So I'm going to go through the old layout of the ride, and then I'll talk about the changes.
Okay.
So basically when you get to the queue, and this is a whole experience, y'all. Guests walk into a large courtyard leading to some stairs that run down the manor, accompanied by the classic Grim Grinning Ghost orchestration and the sound of wind rushing. Just in the distance, you can actually hear the screams of Big Thunder Mountain, which now that we've heard the backstory is a little important. So in the stretching room, when guests reach the doors of the manor, they are welcomed by the voice of the ghost host and a view of a portrait of Melanie. Cast members direct guests into the stretching room, which features portraits similar to the famous ones in the original Haunted Mansion. In French, the ghost host narrates over the sound of a singing soprano as the room stretches. A haunting orchestration helps reveal at the top of the stretching room the Phantom hanging a man by the neck. So we're used to, in the United States, just seeing the man hanging. In Phantom Manor, the Phantom is looking down and holding the noose.
Yeah, so he's killing him.
Like in the process of killing him. So we're going into the hallway in the loading area. Guests are then led down a hallway past the changing portraits that are similar to the original Haunted Mansion, if not the same exact ones. At the end of the ghost host speech, the sound of a singing soprano returns as guests enter the loading area into the doom buggies. The loading area has a grand staircase leading to a window in which a storm is depicted to be happening outside. The safety spiel begins to play in both English and French. So the first room is a sweeping orchestration of Grim Grinning Ghosts, and we see Melanie in a bridal gown holding a candelabra in one hand and a bouquet of roses in another, with the blusher veil over her face. We move into the hallway scene where we can see Melanie appearing and disappearing at the very end of the hallway, still holding the candelabra. The bouquet is gone and the blusher veil is over her face. The second room is a shadow of a ghost scene playing a piano with a crow standing over a book flapping its wings. Similar to the original, the hallway of doors knocking and the clock with the ghost shadow remain the same, but with the glowing eyes on the wallpaper. They glow like bright green, which is cool.
Nice.
The The third room is Madame Leota, speaks her incantation in both English and French. It's a simple seance room, nothing much but the chandelier on the table that she rests on. It's pretty much standard, the same as what we're used to. The fourth room is the classic ballroom scene that we all know and love, except Melanie sings in her lovely soprano voice over the dancing music as she watches the ghost couples dance together with melancholy. It's a little bit more depressing.
That's so sad.
To say the least.
I kind of like it though.
Mm-hmm. Meanwhile, the evil laugh of the phantom appears as lightning flashes and he is seen in the window looking over the scene. So you have Melanie at like the balcony, like looking over the ghost dancing, and then way up there in that corner in the window, the phantom just pops out and laughs at her almost, to make matters worse, right? The fifth room, orchestral music changes into something a little bit lighter as we go down a hallway where Melanie is seen weeping and singing in front of a skull-shaped mirror as the sounds of the phantom laughing in the next room are also heard, mocking her, right? The sixth room, as we started to enter to exit the mansion and into the Old West area, we see the phantom laughing underneath a very deep blue light. And we dive deeper into the forest. We see a demonic dog baring his teeth and growling at guests as they ride by, which is horrifying. It's the worst part of the ride, in my opinion. But that phantom animatronic, man, even in its old days, is horrifying.
It looks really good.
Yeah, it does.
It looks so good, but if I saw it in person, I would literally cry.
Yeah.
The next room is we dive literally 6 feet under into a crypt and see skeletons coming out of their caskets. We're literally underground. This is where we meet the famous singing busts along with a comforting tune of Grim Grinning Ghost. So we start to get a little bit more familiar and a little bit more whimsical like we're used to, which is nice because most of this has been pretty depressing. This is where the tone of the ride shifts slightly to something a bit more comfortable. Skeletons are seen hanging around with their jaws open while one of them plays a tune on a row of skulls. So it's kind of like a skeleton party happening in the crypt. The next room, welcome to the deadlier side of Thunder Mesa. The town mayor is here to welcome you with the original voice of the ghost host himself, as he is taking his head off of his body as his way of tipping his hat to you. We pass by various vendors and their decayed flesh forms. And yes, I mean that entirely. They're not skeletons. They have like rotting flesh. Celebrating their afterlife in various classic Old West aesthetics. So you have like the saloon, and you have like the harpsichord, and you have the woman dressed in the big gown, except there's rotting flesh on them. We end with an animatronic figure that we have not seen before, completely cloaked and lit with red. His body appears to be burnt, or it's just the flesh decaying off of him as he presents yet another Victor Price evil laugh. The last room is we see Melanie's skeleton pointing the way out of the mansion, and we've seen Melanie fully fleshed and as a full human this whole time, but now we're actually seeing a skeleton wearing a bride's dress. It's kind of meant to imply that she gave her life to help guests escape the hell she's been trapped in for hundreds of years. And she points the way out to the exit. After passing the mirrors, cast members direct guests out of a doom buggy and to the exit stairwell. The classic bride says, "Hurry back, be sure to bring your death certificate," because you have to have that in there. Otherwise, people will get mad.
True.
And as you exit, and I wish it was done. It's not done.
No.
You are fully outside. You're back to hearing the screams of Big Thunder, right? Let's make it worse. We see the tombstones of Henry Ravenswood and his wife.
Okay.
It's just the two of them.
Interesting.
And of course, they have the other tombstones hanging around of like the other people who have passed away in Thunder Mesa. But the highlight of it, overlooking Thunder Mountain, are the graves of her parents.
Where's
That's
Melanie
so sad.
though?
There is one unmarked crypt.
Oh,
There.
okay.
One
Okay.
unmarked tomb. It is completely black and there's no name on it. At least that's what I know
The crypt that reads no name.
of. So now let's get into refurbishment era. So major changes took place in 2018, beginning a 16-month refurbishment. I believe in May of 2019, it finally reopened. In terms of story, Melanie no longer has one suitor, but 4. With all these stories are of their deaths are featured in the stretching room. So we're kind of getting more into the bride who's been widowed multiple times, like Constance Hatchaway. Kind of feels like OG Haunted Mansion, right? I wish we could say that she just murdered them, but that's not true. It is now explicitly implied that he murdered that Henry Ravenswood's ghost murdered every single one of them. You see in the stretching room, we have the paintings, and you see Melanie with each of her suitors. And as the stretching room moves, it's revealed how they all died. And then when the ceiling breaks, it is the Phantom holding an empty noose. You're next, gentlemen.
Love that.
So
great.
love that for y'all.
Okay. I'm good.
Love that for y'all. So as you're going through the portrait hall, it is now explicitly implied that Henry is the Phantom because the picture, they have a changing painting of Henry that then flashes into the Phantom and then quickly flashes back. So we now know for sure that he is the Phantom. So in terms of character additions and erasures, the ending of the stretching room now features empty noose. Next is the famous edition of Melanie at the loading area. Anyone who sees Phantom Manor these days, I can't not think of Phantom Manor and that new loading area because it has Melanie standing at the top of the staircase now, and she's looking out over the storm. It's one little tiny addition. It's not an animatronic, but the way that she looks is just so frightening. It's
unsettling. It's really unsettling.
Like she's just there by herself.
Yeah, and she's just looking out the window as the Doom Buggies pass by. So because she's now in the beginning, she cannot be in the first scene that we see. So we replace it with a classic Haunted Mansion suit of armor dancing, which we're used to seeing. So, and then as you get into the hallway, the ghost of the hallway, we see Melanie being held by the Phantom, like against her will, in an against her will kind of fashion. Yeah. Other enhancements have been made, like adding more dried flesh effects to some skeletons, changing the lighting, adding red eyes. The Phantom now has red eyes. They added more like defining light to the Phantom animatronics as well as updating them so they move with more fluidity. In the ballroom scene was also changed, where Melanie now stands more in the center of it, still looking at the ghosts with melancholy, but the Phantom is now directly behind her.
I don't like that.
Yeah. Lastly, the final vision of the Phantom was changed. We had that animatronic was kind of random. We didn't really know what was that. That was implying that was Henry Ravenswood. So now that we have fully acknowledged that the Phantom is Henry, they put another Phantom animatronic at the very end with Victor Price's evil laugh. And then as we get to the final mirror scene, we have gotten rid of Melanie's dead body, and she is now in the mirror scene following you home.
Wow.
We love a classic Haunted Mansion move.
Phantom Manor is just something else.
She's sitting there as like the way she looked before on her wedding night. So she's in her veil and everything.
Everything. I freaking love this ride. It is like it's so good. I want to go on it so bad. Yeah. I feel like I would be traumatized for 5 years, and I love that.
Totally worth it. Totally worth it.
It would be so worth the trauma.
Yeah,
worth it. I would go on Big Thunder right after and just be like shook. All right, so that is Phantom Manor.
All right, now it's my turn. My attraction is Mystic Manor from Hong Kong Disneyland. This attraction takes place at Mystic Point, which is set in 1909 at an adventurers outpost established in 1896 in a dense, uncharted rainforest surrounded by mysterious forces and supernatural events. So Mystic Point is like a brand new land, or it was made up mainly for the attraction, but it has like other things, but Anyways, you get what I'm saying.
Yeah.
The opening date for this attraction was May 17th, 2013. I'm gonna do the history too. Now.
Mhm.
So Walt Disney Imagineer Mark Shermer is the executive creative director of Mystic Manor. Mark and his Imagineering team wanted to go back to the classic Disney roots. They wanted to go back to the days when Walt Disney developed the Haunted Mansion and Pirates of the Caribbean, but they wanted to make it more technologically advanced because of the time that Haunted Mansion was originally made. A lot has changed since then, so they wanted to update the attraction. Um, and unlike the Haunted Mansion or Phantom Manor, this attraction has nothing to do with ghosts because it interferes with the Chinese culture, which is
Mhm.
also another reason why they had to develop its own unique story.
Mhm.
The facade of the manor was inspired by the Carson Mansion in Eureka, California. The Imagineers wanted to showcase how well-traveled Henry Mystic was throughout the attraction's facade, so you can see various influences from different architectural styles from cultures around the world.
That's
It-
really cool.
I know it's got like it. Well, I can't
And
remember, but
there's a lot of stuff that are like connected to sea from all around the world. So there's stuff from Disney World, there's stuff from
mhm.
Disneyland, Shanghai, and I think Paris as well. Just showing all the different stuff that they've collected, which is really cool.
I think we need an episode on that if we don't already,
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
We
just on
did one a
sea.
really long time ago, but I would love to go back and like really dive more into it if you guys are down.
Mhm.
I
Oh,
am updated
absolutely.
version.
Yeah. Let's
Okay,
do an
cool.
update.
So this attraction has a music score by Danny Elfman, who made music for The Nightmare Before Christmas.
What
Um,
it is.
it's a really good song for the attraction.
Yeah.
Um, and this attraction rarely breaks down due to the ride system's technology.
Mhm.
If you didn't know already, it's a trackless ride system. I don't know if I said that earlier, but it's
Hmm.
trackless.
Mhm.
And then Stephen Stanton is Lord Henry Mystic. He voices Lord Henry Mystic. Frank Welker is the voice of Albert and the Roaring Plant, which we'll get into later. And then Danny Elfman is also one of the singing helmets, or the singing helmets in the English version.
Oh, love
Mhm.
that.
Love
Um,
Danny Elfman.
he's he's an amazing composer, the
Fantastic.
talent.
Yeah.
But let's get into the backstory. Welcome to Mystic Manor. You're invited to tour the manor house and private museum of Lord Henry Mystic, eccentric adventurer, explorer, and collector of art, and his faithful monkey friend Albert. Regarded as one of the foremost museums in the world, Mystic Manor was built to house Lord Henry's ever-growing collection of illustrations, illust- whoa, I cannot speak either. Illustrious art and artifacts, including a newly acquired relic, a beautifully carved Balinese, I think that's how you say that. Don't come for me, sorry. Balinese music box said to make inanimate objects spring to life with its enchanting music dust. Edge your way through a labyrinth of rooms overflowing with photographs, drawings, and rarities, chronis- chronicling the thrilling global expeditions of Lord Henry and Albert. And following a brief slideshow introduction, proceed to the museum's workroom for the start of your tour. And then um, you climb inside the wonder of the modern age, the amazing, trackless, mystic magneto electric carriage, and magically glides. Well, I wrote too much. Hold on. We're just gonna skip that. I'm gonna get into that later.
Mhm.
Um, so we're gonna do the Oh my gosh, did I miss something? I did miss something. Okay, we're gonna go back to this history real quick. So most of the attraction's story is introduced to guests through the images located throughout the queue. And fun fact, one of the pictures is of Lord Henry Mystic opening the Mystic Point to the public, where a young Walt and Roy Disney can be seen near the bottom right corner amongst
Oh,
a crowd, which I thought was
Oh,
really, really cool.
that's
that's
cool.
so cool.
And it's very prominent because it's not like the other images throughout the queue, because the most of the images through the queue are sketches made by an artist named Charles Jade Tamarang, who followed Henry Mystic and sketched many of his adventures. But Chris Turner is the one who created the illustrations, who is also one of the primary art directors for the project.
Mhm.
So let's get into the pre-show. So guests make their way to the private resident entrance, and the pre-show is a slideshow narrated by Henry Mystic, and he talks about the exhibition rooms and the latest item in his collection, an enchanted music box where Albert shows interest. After the presentation pre-show, guests enter the loading area and board the Mystic electric magneto carriage, which actually was invented by Henry Mystic to take guests on a tour of the museum. But Lord Henry Mystic actually won a first place award for his invention at the L'Exposition de Paris in the 1900s, which is like the Paris World Fair.
Oh, cool.
And according to Imagineers, there are two different kinds of ride vehicles. Some listeners may know, but the first is an invisible type of ride vehicle where it's used to take you through the story. And there's another one. The other one is used to be part of the story. So the ride vehicles are used to help tell the story. All right. So the number you're given for the ride vehicle is kind of important because it determines like the route you take. So like, when they're like, oh, how many is in your party? Go to number, XYZ, But anyways, more than 8 galleries overflowing with animated antiques are waiting to be explored within Mystic Manor. The first room is the acquisitions and cataloging room, where Lord Mystic's collections are temporarily stored and awaited placement on shelves. Lord Mystic appears from a door in the middle of the room looking for Albert. He greets guests and acknowledges the music box in the center of the room before leaving to continue his search. Albert suddenly pops out and unlocks the box. The escaping magic dust floats in the air and brings life to all the artifacts. The next room you go into is the music room, where many exotic musical instruments are put on display. A piano is placed in the center of the room, and Albert watches from on top of a large pipe organ, where the magic dust gives life to instruments and music begins to play. And this music is what is played throughout the entire attraction. Next, we go into the Mediterranean antiquities, which you can see the eruption of Mount Vesuvius and the mosaic of a beautiful woman transformed into Medusa, which
I like
is
that.
a tribute
It
to
looked
the
really cool.
original Haunted Mansion. That effect is awesome.
Iconic.
For
It
sure,
is.
for sure.
I'm jealous we don't have it, but
I wish
you
we
can't
did.
win them all. And then we go to the solarium, where Albert tries to toy around with the Venus flytrap. And it's like not like a tiny one, it's like a huge monstrous Venus flytrap. And he's holding a piece of banana.
Little shop of horrors.
Little shop.
Exactly.
Then all of a sudden, a large Venus flytrap opens its jaws as it tries to bite the guests. And then you move on to the next room, which is the Slavic Nordic chamber. And so the Slavic god of winter is there as he blankets a pleasant spring scene. And then he turns the painting from spring to winter and blows freezing wind towards the guests. The freezing wind actually leaves the painting and spreads ice throughout the entire room, finally gathering on a large mirror that shatters the guest's reflection.
Okay, Elsa.
Literally. Next, we go into the arms and armor, where you first see a samurai armor wielding a katana that tries to hack Albert's head off, but he dodges each slash with success. Then a cannon opens fire on the guests, which knocks the carriage and backspins away. The carriage passes through a hallway containing 3 suits of armors, and their helmets floating next to their bodies and singing along with the music. The carriage then moves in front of a large medieval crossbow, which loads and takes aim at guests, knocking them into the next room. On the other side of the room, a Mongolian suit of armor can be seen holding a few helmets aloft and laughing evilly. Next, we get into the Egyptian antiquities, where a sarcophagus of the lost pharaoh glows with a green glow as swarms of scarabs emerge from it. The scarabs cover the lights and guests are stuck riding through the darkness. Guests can also see 2 hieroglyphic tablets where both tablets are animated until the room turns dark.
Ooh.
Also, there's like a water effect that's like mimics the scarab beetles falling on the guests, which is kind of
Ooh.
terrifying.
Oh
The
wow.
mummy.
That's
But-
cool.
Oh
though.
god.
I know, right? But I kind of wanted that would I think would be my favorite part, but it's also kind of
Mhm.
scary. Then we go into the tribal arts room, which is where a large tiki figure, the lava god, dominates the room, spewing lava from its mouth. The two tiki poles stand on either side, as well as multiple other tiki statues. The room is full of chanting and tribal drums, all in tune with the music. 3 tiki statues aim arrows and dart guns, which reveals Albert pinned to the opposite wall by their ammunition. And fun fact, this room is inspired by the Enchanted Tiki Room.
I love it.
Oh.
We love
Yeah.
connections.
I'm a tiki room stan. That makes me happy.
And it doesn't stop there. The giant tiki's eyes turn green, which is a reference to the Shiriki Untundu, which is the antagonist of Tokyo Disney Sea's Tower of Terror.
Yeah.
Ooh.
We love a good sea reference.
I love it so much.
love a good sea reference. Yeah.
Then finally, we go into the Chinese saloon, and a giant jade monkey king statue is brought to life and uses its staff to create a tornado, making the room spin and the vehicles continuously circle the room. During this scene, the paintings in the saloon break apart and fall down. Albert appears on a wall, and the statue tries to hit him with a lightning bolt, but it ends up just blowing away a portion of the wall, which is a really cool effect, by the way, which the wall crumbles, showing the sky, and then the music box appears, and Albert grabs it, but then he loses his grip, and then he jumps. He lets go of whatever he's holding on to get on to try and stop the music box. And then we move back into the acquisitions and cataloging room. The music climaxes as the magic flies back into the music box. Albert slams the lid shut and breathes a sigh of relief as the lights come back on, revealing a perfectly normal room. Lord Mystic then appears behind Albert. Happy to have finally found him, he asks if Albert touched the music box, which Albert immediately denies, wondering as to whether the legends regarding it are true. Lord Mystic thanks the guests for touring his home and bids them farewell as the vehicle moves back into the station. And I would like to note that that Albert's outfit is like torn, and his hat is like on the wall
I love that.
with an arrow.
Oh, the arrow's still there.